It was just another typical Friday evening in our quiet Boston suburb. Laura and I had made it a habit to host our neighbors for dinner parties every few weeks. We'd grill up some steaks, open a few bottles of decent red wine, and catch up over harmless neighborhood gossip. As I set the patio table, I could hear Laura's warm laughter drifting in from the living room, where she entertained Diane and Mark from across the street. Laura had a gift for making people feel welcome and at ease. I smiled, thinking how lucky I was to be married to such a lovely woman. When our other neighbors Jack and Melissa arrived, we all settled onto the patio. The early summer evening was pleasant, the conversation flowed easily, and I sipped my Cabernet, feeling utterly content with my charmed life. Little did I know, that illusion of domestic bliss was about to shatter into a million pieces. Laura taught a couple of yoga classes each week at a studio downtown. On this particular Friday, I'd planned to surprise her by stopping in with her favorite flowers from the grocery. Maybe we could grab an early dinner after her class and have a quiet night to ourselves. I pulled up to the studio around 5 p.m., a bouquet of sunflowers on the passenger seat. As I killed the engine and grabbed the flowers, faint music and laughter spilled out from the propped open studio door. Strange, I thought Laura's class should be over by now. Starting through the window, the sight that met my eyes nearly made me drop the sunflowers. In shock, there was my wife, lustfully tangled with a tall, muscular man. His hands grasped her curves as they kissed with an intensity that left no doubt. This was far more than just an innocent fling. "Laura," I shouted, pushing through the door. They broke apart, Laura's eyes going wide with panic. The man, some arrogant Jim, wrapped from the look of him, scrambled to pull his shirt on. "Jonathan, I can explain," Laura sputtered, hastily straightening her clothes. "Explain what?" I shot back, my voice shaking with rage and humiliation. "That you've been screwing around behind my back with this piece of garbage." The man opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "Don't bother. Your history, pal." I turned an icy glare on Laura. "As for you, we'll discuss this at home." I stormed out, petals from the crushed sunflowers spilling across the floor like splashes of yellow blood. In that moment, 3 years of marriage died. Our vows mocked by the sight of Laura's infidelity. The drive home passed in a blur of rage and disbelief. How could she, the Laura I knew, the woman I'd built a life with, would never do something so deceitful and cruel? Yet the images replayed in an agonizing loop. Her limbs intertwined with that arrogant bastard, their bodies moving together in a grotesque parody of the intimacy Laura and I once shared. I stormed into the house, slamming doors and breaking anything fragile within reach. Wedding photos, crystal vases, diplomas. If it represented the lie of our former life, it shattered against the walls. When the frenzy subsided, I collapsed onto the sofa, chest heaving, revenge flickered. In my mind, a small spark at first before growing into an insatiable blaze. Laura betrayed me in the worst way. She deserved to lose everything. Our home, her financial security, her reputation. As for her pretty boy toy, I'd personally ensure he paid a devastating price. Soon, a ruthless plan took shape. The first icy tendril of justice for the profound ache Laura had inflicted. The next morning, I dressed calmly and headed into the city to the bank where we held our joint accounts. With a few deft keystrokes, I locked Laura out, canceling her debit and credit cards. "I'm separating from my wife," I told the befuddled bank manager with a tight smile. "She'll need to open her own accounts from here on out." Emboldened, I phoned our landlord next from the car, informing him Laura's indiscretions had dissolved our marriage. She has 30 days to vacate the apartment per her lease agreement. The oblivious man offered condolences, which I accepted through gritted teeth. I could only imagine Laura's confusion and panic when her cards declined and the notices arrived to leave our upscale complex. Ruining Laura's deadbeat boyfriend proved equally satisfying yet more complicated. Some worked as a personal trainer at one of the city's most prestigious gyms. His clients included business executives, celebrities, even local politicians, the type who wouldn't take kindly to his indiscretions. After some deft computer hacking, I unearthed Adam's client roster along with their contact details. One by one, I sent an anonymous email with attached photos proving his affair, starting with his highest-paying clients. Is this the type of man you want mentoring your family? The email read in part, his unscrupulous behavior and inability to honor commitments makes him unfit for his profession. Within days, my phone lit up with a call from the gym manager. Adam resigned today, effectively immediately, the gruff voice informed me. Heard through the grapevine he's having personal issues. I chuckled darkly. Personal issues didn't begin to cover the professional devastation I'd unleashed. One by one, Adam's panicked clients had dropped him until the gym had no choice but to cut him loose. His career was ruined, his future prospect shattered. Revenge tasted sweeter than I could have imagined. Yet no amount of financial or career sabotage could placate the roiling ache Laura had inflicted. Justice demanded utmost humiliation before our friends and neighbors. The annual neighborhood block party proved the perfect opportunity. I procured an old camcorder from a pawn shop and spliced together damning footage from the yoga studio security camera. The resulting video left no ambiguity about the lurid acts Laura and her boyfriend had engaged in. That evening, I waited until most residents had arrived, stomachs full of hot dogs and beer. As dusk fell, I fired up an outdoor projector I'd rented and streamed the video onto the side of Jack's house. The video's audio resonating loudly in the deepening darkness. Laura's moans soon pierced the stunned silence, followed by gasps and muffled expletives from our neighbors. The footage played for endless, torturous minutes until the lights flicked on, fully illuminating the crowd's disgust and shock. I stood stiffly, meeting Laura's devastated gaze across the yard. In that moment, she grasped the full extent of my vengeance, the depths to which I would go to demolish her world. For months, she and Adam would remain social outcasts, their reputations and standing in tatters, just deserts for their depravity. In the weeks after the block party, our suburban utopia disintegrated into awkward silences and furtive glances whenever Laura or Adam dared to show their faces. Friendships fractured, with the more pious neighbors loudly condemning their indecent behavior. How could you do this to Jonathan? Diane, my former neighbor, hissed at Laura in the grocery store. After everything he did for you, you're a disgrace. Laura flinched, cheeks flushing, and quickly abandoned her cart. Once the radiant sun of our social circle, she now scurried through town dodging disapproving scowls. Adam fared no better. Thanks to my efforts, clients and friends alike had written him off as a sleaze, unfit to be entrusted with their families. These only remaining comrades were the barstools at CD taverns where he drowned his misery. This is on you, man. He slurred at me one night outside Mackenzie's pub, breath reeking of cheap whiskey. You couldn't just let it go? I grabbed his collar, eyes narrowing. Let it go. You stuck your filthy pecker in my wife. This is justice, pal, plain and simple. Now get out of my face before I put you in the hospital. By summer's end, neither Laura nor Adam could bear walking the sidewalks where they'd once felt at home. Both slunk away in search of an anonymous new beginning, reputations and ashes and finances. In ruin, vengeance, however exquisite, had finally been achieved. I could move on. Over the next year, I licked my own wounds and slowly rebuilt my life from the scorched wreckage Laura left behind. The divorce proceedings were merciful. You put up no fight, likely too ashamed to contest anything. As the old saying goes, living well is the best revenge. And I endeavored to curate a fresh start utterly devoid of the betrayal toxin. A minimalist, loft downtown with a view of the Charles River, resuming hobbies like hiking and photography that had lapsed amid the comfortable complacency of my previous existence. Most importantly, I cultivated a new circle of friends, couples like Michael and Tina, who valued trust and commitment above all else in their own marriages. People with solid moral cores, a far cry from Laura's deceptive nature. It was through this renewed social life that I met Emily, an art instructor at a local college. Unlike my former wife, Emily radiated sincerity and substance. There were no egocentric pretenses or desperate bids for attention, just a warm, grounded presence that immediately put me at ease. We took things slowly at first, both a bit gun-shy from past heartaches. But Emily's compassion and emotional maturity steadily disarmed my defensive walls. For the first time since the betrayal, I allowed myself to open up and trust another woman. As winter's chill faded into spring, Emily and I merged our lives fully. I watched her uncomplicated joy as we picked out furniture and decor for my for our loft. Her genuine enthusiasm for building a home together couldn't have contrasted more starkly with Laura's transparent materialism. While Laura constantly goaded me into ostentatious renovations and designer splurges to keep up with the Joneses, Emily embraced simplicity and modesty. Her eyes didn't linger wistfully on showrooms and want ads. Our new life together was enough. She needed nothing more. It was a crisp April morning when the letter arrived from Laura. The return address scrolled in that familiar loopy script. My throat tightened as I carried the plain white envelope into the kitchen, sliding a fingernail under the seal. "Everything okay?" Emily looked up from the cutting board where she prepped an omelet. "Yeah, just a letter from my ex." Settling at the table, I unfolded the pages, chest tightening further at the opening lines. "My dearest Jonathan, I don't know if these words will ever reach you, but I need to try." For several handwritten pages, Laura poured out an anguished soul, detailing how her world had imploded in the months since our bitter split. She expressed deep remorse for betraying the sanctity of our marriage with Adam while attempting to explain the self-destructive impulses that had clouded her judgment. At first, reliving those agonizing memories caused my grip to tighten on the letter, crumpling its edges. Yet as Laura's neat script spilled across the pages, something inside me shined me, shifting almost imperceptibly, an infinitesimal loosening of the resentment, crushing my heart. She wasn't making excuses, but finally articulating the internal conflicts and painful childhood that had warped her ability to experience genuine intimacy. The affairs, yes, she confessed to others before Adam, were misguided attempts to fill an insatiable void she didn't fully understand. "I'm so sorry for shattering your trust in our vows," she wrote, the ink bleeding where teardrops clearly speckled the page. "If I could go back and make different choices, I would in a heartbeat." Her words trailed off, but not before describing her current living situation. A meager studio apartment, working double shifts at a diner, her yoga teaching aspirations, and ashes. She had hit rock bottom, yet was slowly clawing her way back, buttressed by faith and weekly counseling sessions. At last, her elegant scroll cut to the core truth. "I'm not asking for us to reconcile, John. I know I obliterated that possibility with my selfishness, but I had to take this chance and beg for your forgiveness, to hear from you one last time, so I can close this agonizing chapter and move forward in my journey to become a better human." I set down the letter, not realizing Emily had read along over my shoulder. A few straight teardrops had stained the paper, but for my eyes or Laura's, I couldn't say. "Oh, Jonathan," Emily murmured, rubbing my back soothingly. "I'm so sorry you had to go through all that pain, but it sounds like she's really working on herself now." I nodded numbly. As much as the words lacerated old wounds, I sensed a flicker of, not quite peace, but acceptance. Deep down, I knew I had to finally respond, to let go and move forward. With a lump in my throat, I retreated to the small office nook, booted up my laptop, and began to type. "Dear Laura," after staring at those two words for several minutes, the rest began to unspool. With each sentence, I felt the lead weight of resentment dissolving further from my soul, till my fingers flew nimbly across the keys. I acknowledged her remorse, expressed hope that she'd one day find wholeness in faith and her counseling, but I also bluntly stated that her betrayal had irrevocably shattered any possibility of rekindling our relationship, of ever regaining the unconditional love and trust that should exist between spouses. "On some level, I do forgive you," I wrote, though my eyes stung with fresh tears. I realized we're both human, flawed, and capable of inflicting immense pain on those closest to us. For that reason, I don't wish you continued suffering or unhappiness. My hope is that you find genuine healing and self-acceptance. But I can never forget the anguish of your deception, of having my entire reality appended by your selfish indulgences. That scar runs too deep. While I've moved forward and am at peace with my life now, a part of me will be forever changed by your choices. Finally, I closed with a simple yet definitive line. Take care, Laura. I wish you all the best in your journey. This is goodbye. Hitting send. An immense weight lifted from my chest. At long last, I felt closure over the entire gut-wrenching saga of loss and vengeance. Free to embrace my new life and the profound gift of Emily's love without remaining shackles to my traumatic past. When Emily pecked me tenderly, silently reading the finality on my face, I pulled her close and soaked in her tranquil devotion. This woman represented a fresh start and a vibrant future, the polar opposite of Laura's turmoil. With her by my side, I felt reborn.